We're going to talk a little bit about the different techniques that we're going to use with our watercolors. And I have a sheet like this right over here that has the boring, plain old, all of the techniques listed out. And I have old videos that we can watch of those, but it's not as fun as doing something a little bit more individual. That way we can be more expressive. So we're going to talk about a couple different terms on here, and we're going to talk about a couple different supplies. I always have my clean water cup over here, I have my palette right here, and I have the same brushes that I have for you guys over here. I've never used this brush before, and so we can tell that the tip of the brush is just a little bit stiff. If I want to put it in my water, give it a couple quick swishes around, make sure that extra water is off the edge so we don't have too much. And then just to get our watercolor paint started, in case you haven't worked with condensed or concentrated watercolors before, you want to have your water on your brush, put a little bit in the bottom, and then you're just going to swish it over the top of your dried watercolor paint, and it's just going to activate the color that you need. If you need a darker or more opaque pigment, keep rubbing it over top of the dried paint that you have on the side, and then your water pigment will fall down below. Now, since these brushes are white, the ends of the bristles are going to be a little bit stained after we use it, and the worst offenders for the staining of the bristles are the blue, as you can tell, because it stains my palette too, and the Viridian green. But for right now, we are going to work on painting our little yellow fish, and I have my little yellow fish over here, and we are going to work with just a solid wash, and we are also going to work with lifting a little bit of our wash out. So a solid wash, you're just gonna put it on and it dries all the way flat. So I'm mixing plenty of water in my base with my yellow, so it's not like a punch you in the face yellow, and I'm just gonna wash over all of my little fish. I'm using a detail round brush right now so that I have the pointed edge, but I also don't have the flat area, like the edges of a flat brush like I would, and I want to make sure all my wet paint areas connect. And I'm just going straight over top of my sketch. Before I did this, I did erase back any dark parts of my sketch so that any of those areas wouldn't be too dark for the yellow. So you can see my sketch right here really dark and right here pretty dark. While it is drying, if there's any areas that I don't want to dry solid, what I can do is I can take a little bit of paper towel, just the regular junky paper towels that we have here at school, and then I can do what's called a lift. Now, I want the belly of my fish to be a little bit lighter, so I'm gonna do just a little bit of a lift, press, and it takes out some of it through there. And then I'm gonna do a tiny bit right in the fins as well. That way, it's a solid wash, but then we also have some variations. Normally I would let that dry all the way, but I feel like I took a little bit too much off with my paper towel on the fins. So I'm just gonna go in with that same detail brush that I have, my detail round, and just get a little bit more of that extra yellow and just put it back in. There, that way it's a little bit more yellow at the bottom. So I'm gonna let that dry until I can't see a shine. Like if I look from the side, I'll be able to see my whatever light source is making a shine on there. Once it doesn't appear shiny, you can then try and touch it. If it's cool to the touch, it's not all the way dry yet. When you're doing lifts, this is what we call a wet lift because my paint was still wet. If you wanted to lift something out after it's dry, that's called a dry lift. And then if we had something that we wanted to kind of take it out or reduce its impact, make it less visible, you could do what's called a feather out. So on this over here, this was a wet lift, this is a dry lift, and this is a feather out to where you could take a clean brush, clean brush, clean water, and go over the edge, and let me see if I can do it right over here, go over the edge of it, and you're just gonna kind of go over those things and loosen up those pigments. Now, this little sheet over here is about 5 years old by now, so it doesn't want to loosen up very well, but if I leave that water on there for a little while, or if I go over it and manipulate it with my bristles of my brush, it's gonna soften those edges or kind of feather out those edges just ever so slightly. Now, the longer you wait, the harder it is to get anything to feather out or lift. So let's see if I can actually get anything lifted off of this 5-year-old painting. It did a little, not a lot, but a little. It at least softened up my edges. That's why if you have adjustments you want to make, you want to do it at the very moment that you figure out that you have adjustments to make.